Hey, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us for the second half of our fulfillment cleanup workshop. Uh, During our first half, which is now posted to YouTube, we talked about the structure of fulfillment and how the different elements layer together. And I shared my kind of visual of it, which might not be how you necessarily visualize it in your mind. But there's kind of two halves. There's the configuration you set up, and then there's the physical structure of where the item resides. We took a look into the configurations that contribute to how those policies and rules and TOUs all get applied. And we started to talk about um, thinking about a cleanup. Um, so we looked at analytics reports that are available in the fulfillment folder in the Whack-to-Click Consortium shared folder that show your rules, your policies, your TOUs, your user groups. So you can kind of see from two different angles whether or not there's redundancy or things that are just not being used. Um, so here's some of my thoughts, because that's kind of where we ended last time. So the thing with Alma is it works the most efficiently and it's the easiest to like troubleshoot if there are the fewest possible layers of these different factors and configurations being applied to the item. So granular settings in Alma really exist just for the exceptions. So you have like one tablet that sits at a location and has a different checkout policy. That is the time for an item policy. Um, Item policies allow those extreme exceptions. Otherwise, like your books in your main stacks, those ideally should not have item policies. You probably have, 100,000 plus books that all check out exactly the same way. Um, and there's no reason for those to have item policies on them. So what's nice about that element of the cleanup is that you can do bulk item changes and remove item policies, which we can go over if anyone is interested once we get into the more like hands-on part. Um, Fulfillment units, I I see a lot where they're constructed more geographically, like, oh, these are all the things that are kind of like at the front of the library, and these are the things that are at the back of the library. Um, but really, one of the quickest ways to clean up the number of rules that you have and start to clarify the behavior of checkout is to create your fulfillment units or start adjusting your fulfillment units really um, to reflect the collection of items that have similar policies. So rather than having non-circulating locations in every single fulfillment unit, have a non-circulating fulfillment unit and put all the locations that don't circulate in that fulfillment unit. Suddenly, that fulfillment unit has one policy, probably your default term of use, which is does not circulate, is not requestable. Um, and all of your other locations don't need to have that rule necessarily. Um, and then I recommend a um, a fulfillment unit for all of your um, main book collection. So those locations that all check out for the same amount of time, even if they're kind of sub uh, labeled by different tags almost, like I know Spokane has a peace studies collection. Uh, quite a few schools have juvenile fiction or ESL collections, but those books, as far as I've ever seen, typically check out for the same amount of time as the main stacks of your collection. So putting all of those together is a great way to simplify because then you've got maybe one or two rules, like circulates to faculty, staff, students for, you know, a month, circulates to community members for 2 weeks, and uh, is requestable. Boom. Um, for short loans and equipment sometimes is actually the opposite of short loans. So maybe you have an equipment location, but if you have course reserves, DVDs, media kind of things that maybe go out for a week or 8 hours or 24 hours, you don't need to sub uh, fulfillment unit those up. I would suggest, putting all of those in one fulfillment unit. And that one ends up probably having the most rules because maybe you have a 6 hour course reserve and a 24-hour course reserve and a 7-day media. So 3 rules. Woohoo. And then if you do have equipment like laptops, or calculators that go out for an entire quarter, um, then it probably is a great idea to put those locations together in a fulfillment unit. So, from what I've seen of everybody's physical spaces, as well as um, successfully kind of cleaned up and streamlined configurations, 4 fulfillment units pretty much will nicely handle everything. Um, you don't need 7 or 8, but it also doesn't make sense to only have one or two. Um, so that's just my thoughts. Clearly it functions in lots of ways. One of my other kind of big pieces of advice is there are description fields in many of these policies. And I so often see the descriptions as the exact same words as whatever the title of the policy is. Use those descriptions to type up whatever notes you need to make it make sense when you're looking at the configuration screens. So if that's, you know, this is the main collection policy for all books that are going to check out for 28 days. Write all of that down instead of just being like main stacks. And the policy is called main stacks. Um, that way, if there's a problem and someone in the future is trying to troubleshoot or they suddenly need to change the policy like we had to in the pandemic, you can go in and be like, okay, here are all those 28-day ones. We need to change those to quarter long. Or here are all the ones that are tagged for students. We actually just want students and faculty to have the same uh, rules and policies. So I'm going to put faculty on all the student ones and delete all the faculty ones. Very easy that way if you keep those description lines um, kind of filled up and not just redundant. Um, and then this is a tip that I actually got from this case study that I'll share with you a little bit. Building fulfillment unit rules from the smallest exceptions up. So I'll go ahead and go in to an environment just so that we can see what it looks like. Because it's kind of a conceptual, but it is also actually laid out bottom to top. Um, config and fulfillment. And we're going to look at fulfillment units and then we're going to go. So, like, I really think this is too many. Um, we could have put STEM Center into some of these other ones because it is equipment and has the same policies, but I thought it needed to be a different fulfillment unit in order for them to have like the permissions, but they're not touching this level of stuff anyway. Anyway, okay, so we go into equipment and we look at fulfillment unit rules. So the least amount of items that will get snagged by a rule should be this bottom this bottom rule. Sorry. So 1 week media equipment should theoretically be applying to the fewest amount of items. So if we look at this, it is for faculty and staff and a location of the 7-day ref desk. So description should say faculty and staff 7-day ref desk, because then we know what the heck we're talking about. Because media is an item policy. It's also the name of a location at Big Bend. So you would think, oh, that's what it is. Nope, that's not what it is at all. Um, and then no loan community equipment. So you would say this one's actually not bad, but it's like does not loan to, you know, anyone but our faculty staff. Um, but here's the thing, probably don't even need this rule because we've designated user group in all of the other rules above this one. So if a Central Washington University user, there's 4 of them, comes in and tries to check out an item, they're not going to qualify. And then, like, they should come down then to default loan rule, which is default terms of use, which is not for loan. So we don't need this no loan community equipment. In fact, I'm just going to do this and I'll talk to Amanda about it later. This no loan on reserve, again, item policy of reserve is redundant if you have items in a location that do not loan, then just put them in a fulfillment unit that does not loan. And reserve is not something that doesn't loan. Reserve means it's a short, yeah. That was a John. John has retired, so I'm not really surprised that it's a little goofy. So we, here we are in the equipment. Most everything is going to hit the first rule, the top rule should be almost everything here. And this is if it's the user group of faculty, staff, student, or trio, and the item policy is equipment, end of quarter equipment, or STEM, which again, like we shouldn't be using item policies like that. We should have locations that are equipment. Then it's going to be end of term. But what's interesting is the term of use is student end of term. And here we have faculty and staff in the user group. So maybe this term of use needs to just be end of term. And then the description on this end of quarter is faculty, staff, and student equipment end of quarter. Um, the next thing is faculty, staff, and then faculty laptops. So this is actually a pretty good one. Um, a good rule to have because this calls out the locations that are different from the locations in the first unit. So if a student somehow gets their hands on one of the laptops from this location and tries to get checked out to them, it won't trigger because it's limited to faculty and staff. So the first 2 rules are great. Then we have this 24-hour ref desk and a user group of student. Well, like I think we looked at analytics and there's like 5 items at this. And we have a 1-day policy as well. So like here in the middle is where it starts to get a little muddy between using locations and item policies. So if we want the location of 8-hour ref desk to apply to anyone. So like anyone can come in if they have an account, whether it's, central student, faculty, staff, community, and you want it to check out for 8 hours because it's at the 8-hour ref desk, then you do not need to have a user group input parameter. You would just say location of 8-hour ref desk gets the term of use 8 hours limited, but this term of use is called students. So you see mismatch between, well, but it's getting applied to community and faculty and staff, and we don't have a description that actually says, nope, not limited to students. It's literally anybody picking up something from 8-hour ref, which again, I don't think there's that much at that location. Um, 1 week student equipment. I don't even think we have yeah, so there's a 7-day ref desk location, and then we've got these random user groups attached along with student. Um, so again, if like there are other student user groups that are not included, and if you just want it to not check out to faculty, you can actually say user group not in list and choose like faculty. And then, like whatever it is. Um, so hopefully you kind of that helps you visualize how things at the bottom of your list here really should be these should be based on like item policies. They should be the extreme exception. Um, you shouldn't have item policy level rules at the top. At the top, you're going to have, most of your locations that are assigned to this fulfillment unit and most, if not all, of your user groups in the top. And then by the bottom, you just have like one tiny little thing. The default uh, term of use is no loan, but if it's hard to remember that, you can see that when at some point Amanda or John also created a no loan term of use, and that gets used sometime instead of the default term of use of not for loan and like not renewable and not requestable. Um, so generally speaking, if there's you've got a lot of stuff that checks out in this fulfillment unit, there shouldn't be a doesn't check out at all in this fulfillment unit. If it's based on a location, that location or this item policy should then be in a different thing. Um, so yeah, and this is like a lot of locations in here that don't necessarily like have items in them anymore. Since this is equipment, it really should be all of laptops and all of calculators. And if there are books in these weird locations, like, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways you could solve this. Um, but Amanda's not here, so it's like I'd rather get into like somebody else's. The other thing, so ILL. I recommend putting ILL into your like short loan or limited fulfillment unit because the way most people are doing physical lending is you check it out to a user of the library that you're lending it to, and that user's in a user group of ILL or other college or other library, and it just has a term length that, you know, maybe general is 28 and ILL is 30. So having an ILL fulfillment unit isn't necessarily necessary because you're lending books from your general collection. So you just need an ILL policy in your general fulfillment unit. So if we look here, yeah, we don't even have, I think 30-day loan might be, yeah. Look, there's an interlibrary loan rule in the general fulfillment. Like nobody is, and let's see, if we look at the fulfillment unit of ILL, what are the locations? There are no locations because they don't move a book into a location just to check it out. So like, look at, I'm gonna do this. Check this out. Delete. Don't need it because it's part of general or it's part of short loan wherever it was sitting. Um, so yeah, media probably can either the locations here can get put into equipment or general. Limited and short loan, like I don't know what the difference is between those, but again, these are descriptions that are useful. That I created this one outside of library equipment at STEM Center, so we know exactly what fulfillment unit that is without having to guess. Um, so yeah, so that is what I mean when I say build the rules from the smallest up. Your default is going to catch anything that's not specifically pulled out and say, nope, it doesn't loan. So you just have to kind of parse all the way up. Um, so
Hey,
last
Carly.
November,
Sorry,
um,
can I ask a question, Carly? It's
yeah.
Abby.
hmm
I had two. I had two. Um, we can test this in Sandbox, right?
So it's probably you could, because you could go into Sandbox and create some fulfillment units and like make some items with certain policies. But you can also um, create fulfillment units with test locations,
Mm-hmm.
or you can like add a rule and leave it inactive. You can also use the fulfillment configuration utility
Mm-hmm.
uh, to like test a new like so if you're like, okay, well, I just got rid of that ILL one, uh, what how is this going to trigger this time?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously this won't change. But so if we had, what are they called? Premier sandboxes where they were duplicates of your live environment, it would be pretty easy to test in Sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
To test in Sandbox with our shared sandboxes would be quite a bit of work because you'd essentially have to create or recreate your location structure
Oh,
and all of your policies.
okay.
Um,
Got
so I I think it's much easier to create a test item and apply, the location that you think the thing is going to go into, and then do fulfillment utility or fulfillment configuration utility.
Okay. I
Um,
had another question, but I forget. Thanks, though. I appreciate
all
it.
right. Well, yeah, pop in whenever. Um, So last November, there was an Eluna Learns, which is a half-day training provided by the Ex Libris Users of North America group. So it is free and available for all of our members to watch these recordings or register for them when they happen. They're usually, September through November. So the schedule for this fall will be coming out soon. But last November, there was a fulfillment day, and one of the presentations was from Union College in New York. It's pretty small. It's very similarly sized to many of our colleges. Um, They have multiple library locations on campus, a little more spread out, but ultimately similar enough that this presentation would be really helpful to kind of see how they went about looking at their fulfillment configuration. I just wanted to pull out their before and afters. So they were using item policies on more than 5,000 different items. Um, they had 104 different material types, which is another function of fulfillment unit rules. It is not actually like a bibliographic, because bibliographic is not called material type, it's called, we'll look it up, but it's not called material type. Um, So material type kind of functions in the same way item policy does. So if you have a location with laptops, tablets, and calculators, and you want, students to be able to check out of that location, but then if material type is calculator, it's 12 weeks. If it's laptop, it's 9 weeks. So you can use material type instead of item policy. Um, they had 124 different rules. So, when we look at our fulfillment unit rules, like they went in and counted how many of their different rules they had. 15 different user groups, 90 terms of use. Let's see how many Big Bend has. Term of use. 50. So not bad. And that's for all of them. And 6 fulfillment units. They went through and looked at these same things that I have talked about, and hopefully you've kind of thought about since that last week. And they were able to cut their number of fulfillment units in half, uh, cut their terms of use by 80%. They didn't get rid of a ton of their user groups, but I'm guessing that they have graduate students and faculty and maybe adjuncts and like it's a liberal arts college, who knows. Um, from 124 sets to 17 rules. So an average of what, 5 or 6 per fulfillment unit? And again, one of those fulfillment units is probably does not circ. So maybe they have 8 rules per fulfillment unit. Uh, they halved the number of material types that they were putting into item records. And now they only have item policies set on about 30 different items. So you can see how in the perspective of staff time for cataloging, staff time for troubleshooting, clarity of policies when you need to look at your policies and change one. Like if you had to change one of your policies today, how many fulfillment units, how many rules, how many terms of use, how many item policies would you have to touch to change one policy? Like functional, public, we do this thing for this group for this many days policy. Um, you don't want to have to touch 16 layers of Alma to do that. Um, So I think this is, a really great example of how effective this process can be. There's so many times when trying to examine an Alma configuration, you just want to slam your forehead against your desk. But this is one where you can create functional change that impacts staff work and user experience. So I really love it. Um, touched on this, just now. If you want to, kind of create a fulfillment unit with some terms of use and rules in the sandbox, please feel free. We get very little use in the sandbox. And I'm happy to set anyone up who does not have an account in one of them. But fulfillment configuration utility can be pretty effective because if you know, like, oh, we have 16 laptops in this location and some have this item policy and some have this item policy, you can grab two of those barcodes and be like, okay, how is that item policy affecting what's being triggered? Is it even necessary? A few other pages that we didn't look at previously are under patron configuration. So if we go to fulfillment and patron configuration and patron limits, um, this is where a term of use with the overdue or lost fines or fees um, can translate to this max cash before they're blocked. And then you can also do max number of overdues here. Um, so if someone has 5 items overdue and you don't want them to be able to check out anything else, you can set that. Um, so you can see this max cash of $5. $5 is the fee on a lost item. So even if the lost item doesn't have a replacement cost for some reason, if someone's lost an item, it has triggered a $5 fine um, through the term of use, and that will block them from checking out. So there's that. The other one is in these three. So under physical fulfillment, you can look at your overdue and lost loan profiles. And um, we cleaned these up, but I think actually we could even clean these up a little bit more um, because essentially everybody is getting a 7 day, a 14 day, a 21 day, and then change to lost at 28 days. So we could maybe just create, 4 of these and apply it to the different user groups and locations. Um, these are built by choosing a user group, a library, a location, all these things. However, if you don't choose anything, it applies to everything. So, like, if you just want absolutely everything everywhere at every library to go to Lost at 28 days, you just don't put anything in user group or library. And bam, everything goes to Lost at 28 days overdue. Wild. Um, so yeah. So again, I think this is really nicely, detailed and it made sense, I think, when Amanda cleaned it up from what it was. Um, but we don't, it's just she said it for every single quote library. However, they actually only have 2 physical libraries. So we've got a whole library configuration thing to clean up for her as well. Um, but yeah. And then the auto loan renewal rules, if your college does use that, should be under, where is it? There it is. It's under physical fulfillment here. Um, so we have one auto renew, and if it's anything, if it's faculty or former faculty and staff, and the item was from the main library, it will automatically renew. So if you are using auto renew, this is a place to kind of look and see if maybe something got entered during the pandemic that is still hanging around that doesn't need to, or if you're like, wait, our policy is that students can renew, but we're spending a lot of time and effort communicating that. we get overdues and then we're having to manually renew, change it to, students auto renew if the location is main stacks. You probably don't want to auto renew laptops because you want to get them back and make sure they're in good condition. Um, but it's not uncommon on a 28-day book loan to have it auto renew. And then you're not getting all the paperwork of overdues and blah, 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 blah. And it'll only auto renew like the one time. Um, then the last one to kind of take a look at is the block preferences under physical fulfillment. And I really wish these were alphabetical. Uh, so this is where you can set permissions and kind of behaviors for different system functions. So what is overridable by any clerk would be override by operator, um, or override by all, sorry. Um, if you only want it overridable by someone with manager permissions for that circulation desk, you can give it that. Or if you want it to be overridable by operators, which is basically anyone who has the permission at that desk. Like, hi, Alma, stop being redundant. Because I would think that if your manager, your operator, so override by all isn't necessarily a needed action, but whatever. So if you don't want anyone to be able to override that an item is loanable, so you're like, okay, these items are not loanable and nobody should be able to override that, then you would say block. And then even if you were the fulfillment administrator, grand general administrator of everything, you would not be able to loan an item that wasn't loanable. Um, so they have a few things that are blocked, so you can't check, no one can check out an item that doesn't belong to the institution. Um, the item on hold shelf for patron, those are so handle op automatically, I'm guessing means that if someone else were to grab someone else's hold off the shelf, override would mean that it could be taken. Handle automatically means that it will delete that existing request that put it on the hold shelf and it changes the status of the item into loan instead of requested. What are some other one? Loan cannot be renewed due to loan status. Like sometimes loan statuses are weird. Um, So if you're having issues, patron card has expired. Maybe you only want your fulfillment manager to look at things that are expired, like if a community user's card is expired, shouldn't be, overridable by an operator. Um, so these are ones where you might want to take a look and see if things have you if your circ staff has been having problems with workarounds and overriding, it could be because it's in these block preferences, which are not in fact block patrons. It is block staff from doing things. Um, so those are some of the other places. I mean, obviously there's a lot of configurations in here. We haven't even really gotten into request statuses at all, and rules for requesting or booking, um, because those vary so greatly between libraries. But um, if you focus on loans, things start to get cleaned up pretty quickly. So anyway, so we've got about 15 minutes if anyone is, curious about their environment and wants us to take a look in there, or we can look at analytics. for your environment, now would be a great chance, or just questions, and we can, you know, look in Big Ben's, or I can show you like how the sandbox is set up if you think you want to try out the sandbox and see if it would be helpful.
I'm kind of afraid to volunteer my environment, but at the same time, listen here. If Linda did something wrong, you gotta call her out on it, okay?
Well,
Well, I
let's
mean,
see.
yeah, well, let's see. Moment of truth, y'all. I will say I've left most of them. I inherited them about 4 years ago. Everything's working mostly fine. But there's been a couple of glitches, and I think it really does come down to just something in one of the fulfillment units. We have Chromebooks and laptops. Chromebooks for sure are our main item. So,
So
yeah,
you've got, yeah, so you've got a fulfillment unit for Chromebook
yep. And that's
with,
me playing around and messing things up.
uh, and let's look at it. Uh, and then, so you've got user group student and item policy quarter checkouts, and then you've got which is just item policy. So then
Yeah.
that's so it's going to let it check out here if it's a student, but then it's going to let it check out to anyone for a quarter if they're not a student. And then if the item policy is not quarter checkout, it would come down to this. And if it's at the location of equipment ask at desk and they're a student, it would allow it to check out. And then nothing will get
Mhm.
triggered for 7 day.
We don't have those anymore, so that's definitely one thing I would clean up.
Yeah. So, and the thing is with these is you don't have to delete them right away if you're kind
Mhm.
of concerned. You can
Yeah,
always just disable.
yeah.
Um, so, um, user role to see physical fulfillment is probably at least, let's go in here. I never know exactly what they're called. Um, and I will sort to fulfillment. I don't, it might be fulfillment administrator, but it could also be fulfillment services manager because fulfillment services manager is not limited to a specific desk.
Right.
Um, it's definitely not operator.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
have
if
basically like every role imaginable, but I don't actually see it when it
hmm,
comes up.
uh,
So,
if you shoot me a message, I can put a second pair of eyes on it.
okay.
Um,
And I'm at Olympic College, so I could talk to Amy when she gets
yeah,
back.
Amy
Um,
usually pretty solid on
yeah.
knowing. Um, let's look at another one of your, so like short loan. This is one that can get messy, but we've got reserve, student center, periodicals, kits. These all seem very connected in how their potential policies. Um, this, however, is probably way too many.
Oh yeah.
My husband has a timer going off in the kitchen and it's about to make me insane. Um, so it seems like from the locations, there's a pretty clear, like, okay, reserve books and reserve photocopy are probably both, either 3 day or 2 hour. I mean, like, geez Louise.
They do vary. We have 2 hour, 4 hour, 1 day,
So
two
one of the
weeks.
things that I worked with North Idaho College on, because she had inherited a lot of practices and policies, was they would just ask faculty how long they wanted things on reserve.
Hmm.
And so faculty will, oh, 2 hours, 4 hours, 3 days,
Mhm.
7 days. And I was like, here's the thing. That's just annoying for you, and they don't actually have any concept of like how long students are going to use those items. So start getting rid of any of those that just don't apply to very like I think she discovered that like the 2 hour one there weren't any items that were connected to that anymore, so we got rid of it. And then it was like, okay, most of the items are attached to the 4 hour. There are a handful of 6 and a handful of 3. And so we left them on, but then the next semester, those faculty that had those items that were 6 and 3, she just communicated like, hey, our reserve hours are going, your times are going to be 4 hours or 7 days.
Mm.
Which would you like? Guess what? None of the faculty even knew how long they'd actually asked for it to be on reserve. Um, so she was able to kind of kick everything into a few more consolidated ones.
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing that is kind of a legacy thing, and you guys can agree with me or not on this one, but this idea that like faculty are somehow more responsible than students and should be able to check out more items or not have overdue fines. No, you'll be getting 50 books back when that person dies or retires. And you won't be getting them back if they just leave. Um, so making policies the same for faculty, staff, and students, um, I think just shows respect for students and also holds faculty accountable. I was faculty, guys. I am super guilty. Um, Make me turn it back in after 28 days. Don't give it to me for 6 months. It will disappear. Uh, so yeah, like that's, I would kind of look at these, you've got 2 hour library use for staff and it says just not equals. And then 2 hour and it says these are the same. And then community is it, it just counteracts the first two. So you could get rid of like 20 and 21 and then edit 19 to just be the item policy and change it to 2 hour library use for everyone. Um, because these are redundant. Uh, so that's fun. Oh, and then here's another one, 2 hour library use. Exactly the same. And let's look at the other. I saw one more. Where was it? Where was it? 2 hour library use for faculty or exactly the same. You have 5 exactly the same rules. So there's one very easy thing. And you inherited those. So I can tell because it just says Alma administrator. So they just put those in probably. Yeah, because how many you got 33 rules. Those 5 are the same, so they can be 1, and then you'd only have 29 rules. Um, and what's interesting is you've got oh geez. Uh you've, you've got them and then they're separated by this Chrome one. And it's like, okay, well, Chrome, like, yeah. So, well, cool. That was a great example because I love finding the ones that are identical because the description isn't very applicable. Like it doesn't help you actually discern them.
Listen, I love showing what not to do. And
Well,
this is
and
a
you
clear
do, you
example.
have a lot of good stuff, like, because I mean, like, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You have descriptions of locations, and 4 of them say ask at desk. So it makes perfect sense that those things would have similar policies and should be grouped together, even though like some of the stuff is on the second floor. So, you know, like some is different types of materials.
Mhm.
They're treated the same way, so they should be grouped together. So that's great. That's exactly how you want to do it. Let's look at your general. So like here's, and I love how you guys have put your physical location
Mhm.
into these names. Because I know you guys also did a ton of work on weeding and kind of like creating your learning commons on the first floor. So it's really great to see like, oh, these things are on this floor, this place, so that there's a visual there for faculty staff who work behind the
Yeah.
desk.
That's
And this
actually
is
the
perfect, right? Like
Yeah.
this is 21 days for staff and students, I'm guessing. So it's just user group student, and then this is user group staff, staff retired. And here's a thing where it's like, why, oh, great, Brian. If staff is like not allowed to check out anything but main stacks, you know, you probably don't need an item policy so much as location
Mhm.
on that. But um and 21 days. Okay, so that's, yeah, so this one probably only needs 2 rules. Um that, you know, faculty administrators get 3 months, everyone else gets 21 days. And that
Mhm.
covers it. So like even this one that looks pretty okay could, you know, could be cleaned up. Because if someone does try and check something out that's not at one of these locations, it's not going to trigger these rules. It's going
Mhm.
to trigger location rules for a different fulfillment unit.
Right. Well, and just a side comment about like listing the locations, the actual like physical location, what floor it's on. Post remodel, you know this, anybody who's been to the library saw a lot of our books got moved upstairs and then we have smaller collections. Everything just kind of got moved around. And my students and my staff and my librarians were constantly asking, like, wait, where is it now? And I was like, let me just answer the question now. And in Primo, when people search for things, they can also see what floor. We only have 2 floors. We're a pretty small learning commons, but even then, people get lost. So yeah, adding the floors has been really helpful, or even something as simple as in front of circulation desk. Like it's actually been really helpful. So yeah,
Yeah, because these names are what show up in Primo,
yeah,
not the codes.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, and that's a great user experience and staff time saver thing.
Mhm.
So, cool, gold star.
Yeah, yay.
Uh,
I do things right every once in a while.
um, yeah. So, thank you for letting us dig into your location. It was nice
Yep.
to like see slightly different examples from Big Bend.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, the other thing I like about fulfillment cleanup is that you can do it a little at a time. You don't have to flip the table to get changes. You can just move a location from one fulfillment unit to another if you realize, oh, that location is randomly do not circulate, but it's in our general. Just move it to closed. That's a fix. That is a little fix. That is low hanging fruit. Um, and, you know, save some troubleshooting in the future. So, I'm always thrilled to dive into this stuff with people and think about the problems. And if I've visited your library, it's all that much easier to kind of imagine your space and how things work together. Um, and um, and yeah, I hope this has been useful. Next week, I will be out for pretty much the whole week traveling to Olympia for the Library Leadership Council meeting and then coming back. But I will be visiting South Puget Sound. And potentially I might have time on Thursday afternoon to come up to Olympic. So I'll reach out if that ends up being an option. It kind of depends on like what my parents plan for my children as activity. And whether or not I need to get back there and rescue a party from the other party. So, any further questions for fulfillment before I stop the recording? Okay.